So the highly anticipated Nicolas Cage film Mandy is finally in release. It was touring the film festival circuit last year, and it's been a long wait. It feels like it's been 2 or 3 years since this movie's been announced. It's really been probably a little over a year. But it's been highly anticipated. A lot of stories, a lot of viral marketing, a lot of online promotion focused around the wild-eyed still of Nicolas Cage, crazed, covered in blood. And so very highly anticipated. So now it's out in a limited release, kind of winding around the country in limited release, pretty much literally showing in 1 or 2 theaters in an area. Even here in Austin, Texas, it showed in, right now I think it's only showing in 1 theater, and the Alamo Drafthouse Village Theater, which is kind of a nice little grindhouse type of. It's one of the older Alamo Drafthouses, so it's kind of nice. It's playing little art houses, and it's online streaming on the on the Googles and Googles and YouTube. Now you can rent it. I think the film lives up to the hype. I mean, this film, very well hyped, and it's very odd with such a hyped movie with Nicolas Cage, who's like a mainstream star. I mean, how many Nicolas Cage films you can just off the top of your head remember? Face Off and Con Air and National Treasure and on. And such a mainstream star who, granted, in recent years has kind of gone direct to video, and this film is kind of going direct to video, and it really has no promotional push behind it other than the viral marketing, other than watch a crazy Nicolas Cage. But it's a weird thing, because I think there's a lot more interest and anticipation for this film than I think the distributor really anticipated. Really expected. Because I mean, I know a lot of people who are not really usually into weird films, who do not know who the director is or anything, right? But it's just like Nicolas Cage is a weird movie. We want to go along for the ride. And I mean, this film does take you for a ride. It really is a good movie that lives up to the hype. I mean, the only way I could describe it is kind of like a psychedelic horror action revenge film. That's really the only way I can describe. The closest thing I've ever seen to it in like a mainstream movie. The closest thing I could describe it to is kind of like Natural Born Killers. The Natural Born Killers, the mixing of animation and the colors, and this film is bathed in this swirling vortex of reds and greens and blues, primarily red, muted red with the crushed blacks, with that kind of lilted red, very similar to director Panos Cosmatos' first film, Beyond the Black Rainbow. There's a lot of reds and things in that. And this film carries over that visual style in some ways, but it reminded me of Suspiria. I mean, it's Suspiria, it's Natural Born Kill, it's these incredibly intricate color designs in this film. It's a simple story. This guy, this mountain man logger, played by Nicolas Cage. I don't even remember, he really didn't have a character name. He's just Nicolas Cage. He's just an archetype. He's a concept. He lives in this mysterious Shadow Mountains area, lives in the woods with his wife in a nice kind of cool house, modern looking house. And he has besieged a group of cult this cult leader Jeremiah, along with these weird biker characters. And the less I talk about the bikers, the better, because there's such a there's some of the scariest characters I've ever seen in a film of recent. These scary bikers and cult leaders come down to his house in the woods. They mess him up, just based on the whole, it's a revenge story, so somebody's got to die, and Nicolas Cage, this death sends Nicolas Cage on a bloody path of revenge. And it's so that's what it is. A simple movie, but told in this, there's really only literally only two or three scenes where the color is kind of semi-normal. It's the story told in these woods, primarily at night, bathed in these psychedelic colors. It feels like the movie itself feels like a psychedelic experience, I watched it last night, and even now my mind is just kind of coming down from it, just coming down from the high, because it's very much like films like Natural Born Killers, and films which kind of like, that's still of Nicolas Cage. That's pretty much one of the only normal shots in the film. The rest of the film is kind of out of focus and bathed in these psychedelic colors, and you're kind of looking into it. It kind of pushes you into looking into the film. I think it was shot on film, right? It's scope, it's Panavision. Shot on film, I guess. If not shot on film, there's this swaths of grain with shift throughout the film. A beautiful film, incredible performances. It's the second film of this guy Panos Cosmatos, who's the son of George P. Cosmatos, the great director of so many films, 80s films, 80s and early 90s films. Panos' first film was Beyond the Black Rainbow, which was kind of an art house hit, a strange movie, a movie very much kind of shades of THX 1138, and I didn't think it was. To me, the story of that film was kind of like a little bit lacking. The visual sensibility was incredible. The visuals were incredible. Beyond the Black Rainbow, it's just, there's very few films which really can come close to looking like that. But what I think he did with Mandy is, I think it's a step up in that now he has a story. And it doesn't have to be this kind of like, Agatha Christie, this intricate plotting or whatever. But it's this basic, very direct revenge story. And so it's very easy to follow, much easier to follow than Beyond the Black Rainbow, where you kind of were off into the Twilight Zone. This film puts you into the Twilight Zone, but it's never really that difficult to follow in some ways, the basic plot. It's difficult to follow for other reasons, and the fact that it's like the film is very in its construction, its pacing, and its tone. Everything is this kind of strange psychedelic experience, that's the only way I can. Wonderful film. The revenge, the showdown, the last act where Nicolas Cage snaps in and goes to work and does his business of revenge. Beautifully rendered, beautiful, wonderful. It pays off. The movie pays off in ways that I really haven't seen a movie pay off, and in a way that Beyond the Black Rainbow really just kind of like the showdown didn't really pay off. It felt like Beyond the Black Rainbow, like 90% of the film was in this kind of psychedelic, retro labyrinth, and then you go outside and it's kind of just like the average real world, and it's kind of like it didn't. This film does kind of, it feels like there are elements of normality in the plot and in some of the characters, but then it just launches you into space and in other ways, and it's just so it feels like this film kind of fulfills the promise and the incredible visual sensibilities of Beyond the Black Rainbow that's carried over into Mandy, and it just comes to full fruition, and it's like wow, worth the wait. worth the wait, you know. I mean, the film begins with a King Crimson song, and it just kind of keeps that tone, it keeps that mood, it keeps that craziness on and on and on. And yeah, it's a weird time. It's a weird time in film and in movie distribution, because it feels like, you know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, this film could have gotten a much larger release and become like a Natural Born Killers and that type of thing. But it's Mandy, and it's so, and also I love the font of the poster. It's in like the Ravenscroft. It's in the Masker Mafia style font, you know, from like Duke Mitchell's Masker Mafia style. So then again, another. And I started imagining what would Duke Mitchell do if he was in the woods. It would be probably more intense. It would be probably way more intense if Duke Mitchell had a crack at those cults and the bikers and so forth. So also the soundtrack, the psychedelic soundtrack, the distortions of the voice reminded me actually a lot of Damon Packer in his films of like Reflections of Evil and Yuppie Fear Thriller and all that stuff. The distortions of voice that just, you know, puts you into another zone where people kind of, they get in a psychedelic zone and their voices become distorted and other people's voices become distorted. That was pretty incredible. Quite a ride, quite a roller coaster. You know, quite a roller coaster ride of a film that I haven't quite seen a thing like. I mean, it has such kind of extremity and weirdness and craziness, and it reminded me in some ways of a Japanese film. But then again, it's not. How can I say this? It's not just exploitation for exploitation's sake. It feels like it has a driving plot and an energy, and it has something that you don't have, which is it has a philosophy. The movie seems to have this kind of philosophy, this pulsing, beating core. It really, I can't say enough about the film. I almost want to watch it a few more times. It's a film that you kind of want to drink in, and you want to go to that experience. You want to go back to the temple. And it was weird because I was watching it, you know, really kind of late, and it was like it was kind of like my mind was drifting to dream in the film, and it was a very weird experience. So if you want to watch it at night or go to a midnight show, I think that's kind of the perfect venue for this type of film, which kind of slips between dream and reality and mixes the two in a vortex. I think, oh man, incredible film.